From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
A rally held for the Montana Highway Patrol trooper that was hit by a suspect fleeing law enforcement. We have an update on his condition in a couple of minutes.
I'm Joe St. George in Washington. The Supreme Court set to hear oral arguments on student loan forgiveness this week. We know this impacts a lot of people, but what's this case really about? Explain next.
6:31 on this Monday. Chet Lehman, Jim McDonald, Matt Elwell with you here. A little breeze blowing on the Montana State University campus. It's getting to that time of year where our camera shots,
they're starting to
beautiful because the sun's coming up.
It's
getting longer.
Here's our downfall. We had the snow overnight. It's still pretty chilly as those skies are clearing out, and we do have slick roadways in several areas. Dealing with some accidents. So
be careful.
Take it
like
slow.
we don't always say that, but please listen to me today.
There you
if
go.
You didn't listen to me before. Most area temperatures are a little on the cold side this morning, teens and 20s. As we're starting the morning, a little bit of snow early this morning. We may still have some mountain flakes out there, but I don't expect to see a lot of snow throughout the day today. You look at conditions for our day planner, temperatures expected to be around the 30-degree mark. It's not going to be terrible as you get into the afternoon, but there are some areas with some ice this morning. Temperatures are going to stay pretty consistent this week. I'm going to talk more about that, our chances of snow, and a look at your road report. That's coming up in just a little bit.
All right, thank you, Matt. 6:32, our top story this half hour. We have an update on Montana Highway Patrol Trooper Lewis Johnson. He was hit by a suspect fleeing from law enforcement earlier this month.
Yeah, MTN's Sean Wells was at the rally that was held for Trooper Johnson and has an update on his condition.
Law enforcement family from across the state were in Kalispell on Sunday supporting Trooper Lewis Johnson on his road to recovery. Trooper Johnson and his wife Kate briefly greeted those in attendance at Kalispell's Logan Health, thanking them for their ongoing support. Logan Health Chief of Surgery Dr. Eric Pelt says Trooper Johnson's recovery to this point has been incredible after spending several days on life support.
He has recovered so phenomenally that I think within the next several days we will be looking for an opportunity to try to help transition him to that next level of care, where the focus will be on that long-term support and long-term function.
Dr. Pelt says Trooper Johnson has suffered severe spinal trauma that requires specialized care for recovery.
And that recovery can be months to years. And so while his other injuries have stabilized, and he should be able to fully recover through those, the spinal cord injury will take some time, and we're very grateful that he's looking into specialty facilities to receive that care.
Montana Highway Patrol Colonel Steve Lavin was one of many law enforcement officials to speak at the rally. He praised the work of Lincoln County Sheriff Deputy Clint Heinz for rendering aid to Trooper Johnson on scene, helping save his life while highlighting the need for continued financial support for the Johnson family.
He saved his life, and thank goodness he had combat medic skills, and you know, to illuminate this for the family. And for their fundraising efforts, because most things are covered, but there's a lot of side expenses to injuries like this.
Deputy Heinz is close friends with Trooper Johnson and his family. He utilized his combat medic skills to save his friend.
Was so making sure we're still safe, while making sure he's breathing, making sure there's no massive hemorrhage, and then just keeping his airway intact. And him talking to me was the most important, and keeping him warm.
Elected officials voiced messages of support during the event, including Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen. The man accused of injuring Trooper Johnson is facing 3 felony charges, including attempted deliberate homicide.
And we're going to make sure that he's held to account. He's going to get the absolute best prosecutors that Montana has and that we can throw at him. So we're going to make sure justice is done in this case.
In Kalispell, Sean Wells, MTN News.
In other headlines this morning, the family of 19-year-old Jalen Williams held his funeral Saturday after he was found dead in Livingston earlier this month. Livingston Enterprise first reported that Williams was found dead in a field near US 89 in Livingston on the 10th of February. Park County coroner has determined death to be hypothermia, said they found no signs of foul play.
However, his family believes that is not the case. Our Krista Merkel spoke with Livingston Assistant Police Chief on Friday and tells her that the investigation is still ongoing and requested confirmation from the coroner to determine that there was no foul play. The family is claiming that detectives are avoiding talking to them about the case and are still looking for more answers. Williams was laid to rest Saturday in Chicago, according to their website.
Well, 636, you or a loved one could soon have student loans forgiven by a policy first proposed by President Biden back in August. But first, the Supreme Court has to decide whether or not the president can legally cancel debt.
Right. As a reminder, Americans making under $125,000 a year could qualify for up to $20,000 in forgiveness. Our Joe St. George looks at what exactly the legal arguments are in Tuesday's case.
What is your student debt number?
Let's see what we find.
We grabbed a Sharpie, a poster, and headed to the National Mall to find out just how much student debt people have.
$40,000, and that's after 15 years of paying it off.
It didn't take long.
I got kind of lucky with mine.
To find other stories and numbers, too.
40K, boom, too much.
Putting a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper probably isn't breaking much news for you. According to College Board, recent graduates with debt in our country owe around $28,400. All of this, though, brings us to the Supreme Court, where Tuesday oral arguments will take place over President Biden's plan to cancel up to $20,000 worth of debt for most Americans.
It's actually a very technical conversation.
Andrew Lieb is a constitutional attorney who says the argument, which is actually two separate cases, isn't so cut and dry. One argument can be traced back to the September 11th attacks and the HEROES Act, which Congress passed in 2003. The White House says the law gives the president authority to waive student loan debt during national emergencies. He's set to end in May. Does that power still exist? Lieb says before the justices even debate that, in the case of Biden v. Nebraska Tuesday, justices are likely to argue whether or not the case should even be happening. The case is brought by 6 conservative-leaning states who want to block forgiveness over concerns it will impact tax revenues. Missouri, for instance, is arguing the Missouri Higher Education Loan Authority will lose money if forgiveness happens. Lieb says that argument may be too weak for the court. Typically, to block something, you need to be a victim.
I think the first question the justices are going to say is, hey, you states that are suing, do you even have standing to sue? The district court actually originally found in this case, they said, hey, you guys aren't the right people to sue. You don't have a damage. You don't have an injury.
The other case, Department of Education v. Brown, is even more technical, arguing that the Biden administration didn't offer a proper public comment period before rolling their forgiveness plan out. Back on the National Mall,
It's not going to fix anything.
Jennifer Slater, who is visiting from Montana, says her family isn't following the technicalities, but they are following this case. She worries, though, forgiving debt without fixing high tuition will do nothing.
Having said that, I'm telling my daughter to apply for that for that forgiveness. I mean, we're not stupid.
Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
Supreme Court gets that case tomorrow.
Right. Yep.
More to follow here on Montana This Morning.
Absolutely.
All right. What's your favorite food? Is it the same as it was 10 years ago?
No.
20 years ago?
No, I would have been 3 at the time, so no, it's not.
Probably not. Well, we wanted to find out if it changed, why?
Right. Well, why do our taste buds change over time? That's a big question, and Scripps News health and science correspondent Lindsay Theas looks into it.
If you once despised broccoli and now you crave it, fear not. The broccoli gods did not put a spell on you. Your tastes can evolve over time. To understand why, we need to know what's happening on our tongue. Your tongue is filled with taste buds, as many as 10,000 when you are born. But those aren't the little dots you can see.
Those are the bumps called papilla, which if you were to magnify it up, you'd find little tiny holes on some of those papilla, and those are the entrance into the taste buds.
Richard Doty oversees the Smell and Taste Center at the University of Pennsylvania and says our taste buds fade over time.
There's a gradual decline in taste buds as we get older, and usually that's accelerated after the age of 65 or so.
That's part of the reason our tastes change as we age, but the bigger factor may have to do with a different sense.
About 90% of what we call taste is really smell. So if you hold your nose and eat chocolate, it tastes just like chalk.
Dr. Alan Hirsch is with the Smell and Taste Treatment and Research Foundation in Chicago. He says our taste change as our sense of smell does.
As you get older, it drops down. Maybe it drops down maybe 10%, 20%, as opposed to smell. As you get older, your sense of smell drops down substantially. About half of those over the age of 65 and 3/4 of those over the age of 80 have a reduced ability to smell.
That's why, according to Dr. Hirsch, some older people compensate by adding lots of salt or hot sauce to their food. Our brains can also play a role in our evolving tastes.
A lot of things that dictate our preferences for food are psychological. So if we think we're more likely to accept it.
So if your taste buds are still intact and your sense of smell is still sharp, you can always try expanding your palate. Lindsay Thies, Scripps News.